Hi everyone, my name is Mayan. Today we're gonna discuss the planning for media usage. This is lesson 2 of educational technology. And this topic we only have 3 points or 3 lesson points. Number 1 is to learn about essential requirements to integrate technology and media in education or educational instruction. Number 2, we're gonna learn the different approaches of teaching and their corresponding steps for the integration into the classroom instruction. And number 3, we're gonna learn about the proper process of technology integration in education. Essential conditions for technology intervention. These include the following: shared vision for technology intervention. This includes the participation of school administrators and school teachers, and we can also include the participation of the parents in the identification or planning of the use of media, identification of the technology that we're going to use in the school. It also includes the budgeting and other related factors to consider when we integrate technology in instruction. Standards curriculum support. The use of technology or media in instruction should be included in the planning of the curriculum, and it should be appropriate in the subjects that our students are going to learn. Another is the required policies. This is very important because this will serve as the guidelines for the students, for the teachers to be followed while they use the media or technology during the instruction. Access to hardware, software, and other resources. This should also be included in the planning of the technology intervention for us to maximize the use of the media or the technology in our classroom instruction. Trained personnel. Of course, there are also people that needed to be in charge in the handling of our technology or media in the school. Appropriate teaching and assessment approaches. The use of our technology and the media should be also supported by appropriate teaching. And we also need to assess those approaches and for us also to improve our teaching and learning, and also identify if those technology and media that we are using are actually effective in our instruction. We have many technology intervention approaches that we might want to apply to our classroom instruction, and here are the following. We have inquiry approach, problem-based learning or PBL, discovery learning, experiential learning, cooperative learning approach, integrated approach, constructivist approach, self-regulated learning, and lastly, the multiple intelligences approach. Let's discuss first the cooperative learning approach. This is an approach where students work as a team in learning academic contents. and skills to address important social and human relation goals and objectives. This is a process of breaking classroom into smaller groups for them to discover new concepts in a team and help each other learn. We can assign a group leader per a group, and the leader can delegate tasks in order to encourage participation and collaboration. Next is the inquiry approach. A technology is a systematic view of finding answers to daily inquiries, suggesting solutions to problem, situations, or simplifying the expressions for one's curiosity. We can do this type of approach through giving topics to our students, and all they need to do is to research for the solutions or search for the answers through the help of the technology such as the internet. This approach is sometimes referred as problem solving method with the following steps: statement of the problem, formulating hypothesis, gathering data, checking hypothesis, and formulating conclusion. Next is the problem-based learning, or PBL. The goal is to develop higher order thinking skills by providing students with authentic context for learning and engages students in authentic tasks. This is different from the inquiry approach because the inquiry approach only suggests students to search for the answers through the help of the technology, while the problem-based learning engages them in authentic tasks. And this is an example of the student engagement in authentic tasks, wherein they are being placed in a laboratory for them to have an experiment and learn. Problem-based learning, or PBL, has two strategies or two ways to learn. The students can work together to solve the problems and learn together, and we can also apply the self-directed learning strategy so that the students can learn lifelong skills. Next is the Discover Learning by Jerome Bruner. This approach emphasizes that learning is an active process and in which learners construct new ideas and concepts based upon their prior knowledge and experience. This popular theory encourages learners to build on past experiences and knowledge. And we may apply this approach by letting our students share about their past experiences and apply their previous learning on a practical task that we may assign to them. And while they do that practical task, they may also discover new learning. Next is the experiential learning. And according to Johnson and Johnson, in year 1994, there are three assumptions about experiential learning. First is that you learn best when you are personally involved in the learning experiences. We can apply it in our classroom through letting our students share their opinion, their insights, and giving them tasks or part so that they can feel that they are personally involved in the learning experiences. Assumption number 2 is knowledge is to be discovered by yourself if it has mean anything to you or to make difference in your behavior. And we as teachers, we can actually encourage our students to give value to the lessons that we are discussing to them by providing them a clear purpose and set of objectives or goals to be achieved. Why is it important to be learned? How it will help them in their daily lives, and a lot more. Assumption number three is commitment to learning is highest when you are free to set your own learning goals and actively pursue them within a given framework. You can actually encourage your students to be committed in the learning through applying the self-regulated learning so that they can be intrinsically motivated to pursue their learning goals. With the self-directed learning, we can ask them to have a notebook wherein their insights or learning reflections can be written, and they can also monitor the progress through that notebook. They can list their goals, learning goals, and the things that they want to practice in order for them to learn effectively and to therefore pursue their learning goals. Next is the integrative approach. This approach emphasizes an interdisciplinary approach to teaching. In this approach, teachers organize curriculum around common learnings across disciplines. And an example of this is learning math and science concepts and skills while singing, sculpting, painting, and dancing. Next is the constructivist approach. This is an approach wherein students continuously revisit previously accumulated experiences and understanding and reconstruct or recreate new concepts as they interact daily with environment. Activities encouraged in this approach are experimentation, field trip, research projects, classroom discussions, and a lot more that are involving the students in daily interactions or interactions with the environment. In this approach, learners are to be trained to be reflective, inquisitive, discoverers, critical thinkers, and creative, while the teachers serve as the pathfinder or the guide of the pupil's knowledge about concepts. Next is the self-regulated learning approach. This is a learning strategy where a learner is intrinsically motivated to seek and explore ways of enhancing his or her own learning. Next is the self-regulated learning approach. This is a learning strategy where our learner is intrinsically motivated to seek and explore ways of enhancing his or her own learning. In this type of approach, we can help our students to be self-regulated in their learning through asking them to keep a journal of their own learning experiences. They can include their insights, their reflections, to-dos list to help them monitor their own progress while they continue to learn. Next is the multiple intelligences approach. This is an approach that acknowledges different ideas about how children learn. Children learn in different ways of styles. Some of the children learn through singing, dancing, playing word games, playing puzzles, and different ways or other ways to learn. Children prefer to learn according to their area or areas of interest. Maybe they're interested in numbers, some are interested in words, or some are interested in solving problems, and others. Children also have different facets of intelligence. They can be intellectually excellent in logical, visual, or musical facet of intelligence. They can be also naturalistic and more. Each facet of individual's intelligence must be equally valued or recognized. This is very evident in our current basic education system, wherein students are being recognized not only in their academic performance but also with their different types of intelligences. Children's activities involve a blend of different facets of intelligences. Watching a video, for instance, may help teach not only the visual spatial learners but also the musical as well as the bodily kinesthetic learners. Children's intelligence can be developed and enhanced through the use of wide range of tools in their cultural environment. Cultural tools include the technical tools such as the books, computers, and which are helpful in the developing of children's intelligence. Children are capable to deal with different types of information represented by the multiple intelligences. And multiple intelligences range from the use of words, numbers, pictures, and music to the importance of social interaction, introspection, physical movement, as well as being in tune with nature. And these are the types of the information that children may deal with. Here are the 21st century skills. These are the set of abilities that students need to develop in order for them to succeed in this information age. And the partnership for 21st century lists three types: the learning skills, literacy skills, and the life skills. The learning skills include critical thinking, creative, collaborative thinking, and communicating. This is also called the 4 Cs. It teaches how student or it teaches the student about the mental processes required to adapt and improve upon modern work environment. While the literacy skills, which include information literacy, media literacy, and technology, focuses on how students discern facts, publishing outlets, and the technology behind them. There's a strong focus on determining trustworthy sources and factual information to separate it from the misinterpretation that floods in the internet. Life skills: flexibility, initiative, social skills, productivity, and leadership. And these are the intangible elements of the student's everyday life. And this focus on both personal and professional qualities. Altogether, these categories cover all 21st century's skills that contribute to students' future career. Here are the guidelines in using educational technologies. First is the purpose. Ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish and why this instructional aid is important. The next one is define objectives. Clearly defined objectives helps you in planning and selecting appropriate instructional aid. Next is the flexibility. Consider that the same instructional aid or material will satisfy many different purposes. For the diversity, you can consider using a variety of learning materials, instructional aid, and resources to develop and maintain the interests of the learners. When it comes to development, you have to consider that instructional aids must be related to the age, maturity, ability, and interest of the students. For the content, you must know the content of the instructional materials to determine how to use them and how to make the best of them. Of course, you also need to guide the learners, and you also need to evaluate the results. Consider your own reactions, and also consider the reactions of your students about your instructional aids that you are using. These are the things that we need to consider when we are designing and developing educational technologies. First, they should be meaningful. They should contain purposive activities to help improve and develop growth of the learners. For the purpose, they should focus on helping the students to be motivated in the learning process. For the breadth, they should encompass all round development of varying group of learners. For the usefulness or utility, they should be useful to a particular teacher as he or she works to a particular uh, group of learners. For communication effectiveness, they should be clearly delivered. For authenticity, they should be reliable and up to date. They should also be responsive to the needs of the society. They should catch interest of the learners, and they must be cost effective. The cost of presentation diminishes as the number of the students increases. When it comes to presentation, they should be presented at the right way and at the right time. For the portability, they should be handy to the teachers to handle it well when the materials are being presented to the class. When it comes to correctness, correct facts or information must be in the materials for better learning. When it comes to simplicity, they should be simple but also inspiring. And for the assessment, and this is the purpose of evaluating the technology to further revise and improve the instructional aid that the teacher will be using. There are two instructional design models which we might consider in choosing instructional methodology. Number one is the ADDIE model, which stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation. The first phase is the analysis, which focuses on target audience. It is also here that the program matches with the level of skill our participant has. Next is the design, which focuses on lesson planning, subject matter, content, based on our analysis with the participants. While the development stage or phase is the production or testing of the designed instructional methodology. Next is the implementation. Implementation reflects the continuous modification of the program in order to make sure that maximum efficiency and positive results are being achieved. And the last one is the evaluation. The goal of evaluation is to determine if the goals or the objectives have been met. There are two stages in this phase. Number one is the formative, which occurs in the initial phase of the evaluation, while the summative occurs at the end. Another instructional design model is the Assure model, which stands for A. Analyze learner characteristics, S. State objectives, S. Select, modify, or design materials, U. Utilize materials, letter R. Require learner response, and the last is the evaluation. In the first phase, we need to know the attributes of our learners, their characteristics or interest. The next step is to state the objectives so that the students might be able to know what they're going to do as a result of the instruction. Select, modify, or design materials as to the stated objectives. Utilize materials or the selected materials. Require learner response. This may include activities which help the students to be responsive in the instructional methodology that is being used. And the last one is the evaluation, which is the crucial stage of the model. In this stage, we need to know the impact that the instructional methodology that we have used in teaching our learners. There are factors affecting the selection of educational technology. Number one is the human factors. Number two is the instructional method. And number three is the practice constraints. In human factors, we have two. We have the learner factors and the teacher factors. When it comes to learner factors, we need to learn about the students' attributes, characteristics, interests, as well as the level of their maturity. Next is the instructional method. The method of instruction dictates or limits our choice of presentation media. It is Is it self-regulated learning method or lecture or exposition? Number three is the practice constraints. This includes the administrative and economic constraints, which both limit the choice of methods and media. And these are the objectives, availability of the media, the time, and the resources that are available. There are 10 commandments in creating learning or presentation materials. Number one, when you're presenting the material, this should not be overcrowded. Number two, be consistent in the format, layout, and conventions. Number three, use appropriate typefaces and point uses. Number four, use bold and italics for emphasis, but don't overuse them. Number five, use title, headings, and subheadings to clarify and guide. Number six, use numbers to direct through sequences. Number seven, use graphics and illustrations to reinforce ideas. Number eight, use symbols and icons as identifying markers. Number nine, use color, audio, music to stimulate but not overpower the senses. And lastly, produce the materials with technical excellence, good quality, good audio, clear, and more. And These 10 commandments will help us to teach effectively, clearly, and so that we might motivate our learners, be encouraged, and stay stimulated while they are learning. The following are the considerations and decision to select the best delivery. Number one, we have to consider the goal, learner characteristics, learning and performance context, objectives and assessment requirements. Number two, we need to review the instructional analysis and identify logical grouping of objectives that will be taught in appropriate consequences or sequences rather. Number three, we need to plan the learning components that will be used in the instruction. Number four, we need to choose the most effective student groupings for learning. Number five, we need to specify effective media and materials that are within the range of cost, convenience, and practicality for the learning context. And in evaluating instructional resources, there are several questions that you should ask yourself that are also important, regardless of the type of resources that you are considering. Does the content match the curriculum? This is about appropriateness of the content of the material to the design curriculum. Number two, is the content accurate, up to date, and appropriate to the materials teach and or enforce learning effectively? Do these resources enhances instruction? Is the resource easy for the teacher and students to use? Are the materials of high quality technically? And lastly, is the use of this resource practical for my teaching setting, cost needed, equipment, and more? That's the end of our lesson. Thank you for listening. I hope that you've learned something about our lesson, which is the planning for media usage.